You already know how to solve linear equations. That's something like, say, 3m plus 5 equals 8. This is easy to solve. You probably already know this. You first subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. We're going to, on this side, we get a 3. Here we get 3m plus 5 minus 5. That's just 3m. We're going to divide both sides by 3. And divide both sides by 3. And we get that m equals 1. When we have a quadratic equation, though, things get a little bit trickier. So let's say we have a quadratic equation. That means quadratic means one of the variables is squared. So let's say I have m squared plus 7m plus 12 equals 0. Now, you might be tempted to do minus 12 on both sides. It's not going to get you the right answer. It's going to get you some nonsense. Instead, we have to do something totally different. We have to rethink everything we know about equation and do this totally different thing. And unbelievably enough, the way that we're going to solve an equation like this is going to involve something that seems totally unrelated. And here's what it is. I know this. I know that if a times b equals 0, so a times b equals 0, here's what I know. I know that either a equals 0 or b equals 0. They could both be 0, but at least one of them has to be 0 no matter what. And that's something very unique about 0. You can only really do this with 0. If you try something else, well, let's try something else. Let's see. That doesn't really work the same with other things. Let's say I say that whoops, give me a second here. Let's say that I say that a times b equals 10. Here, you can't narrow this down at all. A could be, you could have like say 5 and 2. A could be 5, B could be 2, or vice versa. Or it could be 10 and 1. Now, you might say that that's all there is to it. Nope. You could have 20 and 1/2. 20 times 1/2 is 10. That's right. It's not just whole numbers in the world anymore. You have decimals, you have fractions, you have negative numbers, you have positive numbers. You could have 5 times -2. You could have 10/3 times 3. You could have -10/7 times -7. We could go on like this all day. This could go on forever and ever and ever. But when something times something else equals 0, well, that's real nice. Now let's see, how does that relate in any way to, honestly, anything? Let's say I have something like this. M squared plus 7m plus 12 equals 0. Well, this isn't something times something. It's just one big, ugly-looking equation. But I can factor it to make it something times something. Factored, this is m plus 3 times m plus 4 equals 0. Note that I still write equals 0. I don't just drop the equals 0 like a ridiculous. I'm going to make sure that it keeps on saying equals 0. Now this is kind of nice because it's something times something else equals 0. So you know what I can write? I can say either the first thing here equals 0 or the second thing equals 0. I can write m plus 3 equals 0 or m plus 4 equals 0. And at this point, it's just like solving a regular linear equation. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides here. I get m equals -3. Or do the same with this. -4, -4, or m equals -4. And so we don't, the first thing that we're going to do here is to factor it so that we have something times something. We don't do -12 to both sides or anything like that. We do this. We make sure that one side equals 0 and take it from there. Now, what if you have something like this? What if instead of something equaling 0, what if it equals something else? what if you have something like m squared plus 7m equals, say, -10? Now remember what we said before. If something times something equals 0, then one of the two things has to be 0. But if it equals 10 or anything like that, you can't narrow it down at all. You don't know anything at all. So the critical thing here is that it absolutely has to equal 0 for this to just make any sense at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it equal 0. How? I'm going to add 10 to both sides. On this side, -10 plus 10, that's just 0. That's what we wanted. And on this side, I'm going to get m squared plus 7m plus 10. Notice that these are unlike terms, so I leave them separate. And then, you know what I'm going to do? Factor it. I'm going to get m plus 5, m plus 2 equals 0. And here's where we're in a great situation, because we have something times something else equals 0. So we can take it from here. We can write m plus 5 equals 0, or m plus 2 equals 0. And here we just subtract 5 from both sides. So we get that m equals -5, or do the same thing here, -2, -2. M equals -2. And that's how you solve these quadratic equations. The key thing is, the really key thing is, make sure that one side equals 0. Because if one side equals 0, then through factoring, you can get something times something else equals 0, which guarantees that one of those things has to equal 0. From there you can solve it. And this is how you solve a quadratic equation using factoring.